Oh, the psychotropic medication piece is one thing that we've been working on as well because, and I'm not gonna, we worked on this with the Barton Clinic, and so we've developed a training that helps young people become more aware of, you know, the benefits of using psych meds, also alternatives to the use of that medication, because a lot of times youth in foster care are prescribed psychotropic medications more frequently and in higher dosages than the general population. And so this particular training talks about the implications of that, and it also empowers young people to know exactly, you know, if they need those medications, this is what you have a right to. These are things that are mandated by the state that have to happen, and just really making sure that they're aware and able to sit and have that conversation. They know the right questions to ask their doctor. Which just empowers them and gives them a more full experience in their own personal health. Youth voice, youth choice is always a huge thing, ensuring that young people are at the table, and not only at the table, but they're also active and able to contribute to the conversation when it comes to things concerning their personal futures. Monitoring of implementation of the 2013 juvenile justice reform legislation. I don't know the details of that piece, but these are, again, just the priorities and things that empowerment puts at the forefront for things they want to work on. And then designating and developing appropriate foster care options for young people between the ages of 18 and 26. And more so, less of foster care options and more of, you know, transitioning options or permanency options for that older population of young people. All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about developmentally appropriate supports and services and just things that I believe, because I hear the question all the time as we're moving towards this whole, you know, connected by 21 and extending foster care to 21. How does this look attractive to young people? You know, the state is implementing a policy where young people do not sign themselves out of care, or they don't sign themselves back into care. So initially the policy was saying at 18, they're literally in the system, they're dropped off, and then they had to sign themselves or opt in order to receive additional services until 21. But now what the policy is saying is that automatically a young person stays into care until they're 21, automatically, so it doesn't drop at 18, but they have an option to opt out of those services if they like. And again, a lot of times young people will say, I'm done with DFACS. I don't want to see another caseworker. I don't want to see another case file. I don't want to see another WTOP. Bye. And then 3 months later, they're like, I need some help. And so the state has built in policy to ensure that those young people who decide to opt out are supported. But then if they need to come back, that there are things in place to support those young people who decide to come back. And I'm pretty sure that if I polled the room, you guys would probably have some interesting stories about your own kids that were like, I'm gone, I'm 18. And they were like, Mom, you know, when they turned 20 or something like that. So the state has provisions in place to support those young people, to honor their free will and their choice, but then also to give them that option of additional supports if they need it. And so the concept of graduated independence is something that I hear a lot now, buzzing around the state offices. Just graduated independence, we're moving towards graduated independence. And so I think that it's definitely a developmentally appropriate support. However, it has to be done right. It has to be strategic, and I definitely think the state is making moves and taking steps towards ensuring that it is done appropriately and that it does support youth in the way that it's intended to. So I'm really excited about that concept, and I'm really excited about the things that it can do to help improve young people's experiences overall when they're in that interim stage after 18. Again, the piece that I was talking about earlier with the mentors and the communication, I think that it's huge that young people are empowered to build social capital. They have to build a support network outside of DFACS, outside of group home, outside of foster home. They have to build a community connection. I mean, we all had to do it at some point in our lives, whether or not we're in foster care, we all have to build those connections. And so how do you empower a young person to do that, to be able to build those connections? And one thing that I don't have in here is just specifically talking about trauma, because one thing that I get a lot, I get this a lot, is get over it. Hey, you were in foster care? Get over it. And I've had people to walk around that, they're saying that to me, and I'm like, whoa. But they're walking around the actual saying, get over it, to me. And I'm like, I totally get that. I totally get everybody had a trouble. Everybody had some difficulty happen to them in their past. Everybody had that moment where it was just hard and tough. I don't care what kind of family you came from. I don't care if it was, you know, a huge $1 million home. There was a problem there, I'm pretty sure, somewhere in everybody's life. And so, you know, that notion of, okay, you're older now, you're 19, get over it already, okay? But I do want to address the complication in that, because we are talking about young people who have experienced complex trauma. And trauma is extremely real for these young people who've been through foster care. And it's going to look different for every young person. And so just because my parents didn't beat me or somebody didn't, you know, do these horrible things to me, that doesn't mean that poverty wasn't a traumatic experience for me, that, you know, being neglected wasn't a traumatic experience for me. And so it's really difficult when you require a young person to get over in that way, because there are some biological effects of trauma on a young person's brain and their ability to develop and to cope past that. However, there are some things that we can put into place to ensure that that doesn't handicap that young person and that they're not stuck in this mentality of I need a system. And there are some proactive things that we can do as a community to ensure that they're not handicapped and that despite their trauma, they're able to give back, they're able to contribute to society, they're able to be equal partners at the table to help bring about this change. And so I think one of those pivotal things in that is the having a young person having somebody to walk them through that, like a mentor. And I'm saying mentors, I'm sure there are better words for it, but just having that community of people specifically supporting that individual young person. And then I say strategic investment in a young person's future, because I believe that it must be strategic. It's not a blanket, you know, every foster kid gets the same. I mean, in policy, we have to have that you know, strategic, these are the services, but just making sure that they are targeted at that individual young person's future. And then I like the analogy of having young people as drivers. And if you could see, I know I had some interesting driver's ed experiences when I was trying to get my license, but it was extremely pivotal. It was extremely important that I had that supportive adult in the passenger seat, because there were some decisions that I was trying to make, like, oh, I can make this light, that I needed a supportive adult there to say, okay, maybe not, maybe you should, you know, tone it down, maybe you want to slow down, the light is yellow, that means slow down. Like, having that supportive adult, but I am driving, so I'm empowered to do it, but the supportive adult is there to help guide me along and make sure that even if I have an impulse to do something silly, that I have that supportive adult there to kind of help steer me and help me to stay directed on my goals. And speaking of goals, I think that the WTLP, which is the Written Transitional Living Plan, is what the state has mandated right now to serve as helping young people to plan and achieve their goals. And so one of the things that I know when I was creating my WTLP, and there's still a lot of, I don't know what's happening now. I haven't been with a young person. Well, actually, I have worked with a young person who's completing hers recently, but I would love to just know a little bit more about that whole process of how are we strategically helping a young person to plan their own futures. And so there are a couple people that have to sign off on this, like the caseworker, the young person has to sign. But the whole point of it is to help them to plan what are they going to be doing after they transition. And so I think that in using that tool, there are some things that we can do to ensure that it is targeted for that young person's success. And just to talk a little bit about this concept of graduated independence, again, this is a little repetitive, so I'm just going to go through this one. But I think the thing that I'm really big on is ensuring that if we're going to do, you know, extend foster care to 21, ensure that young people are connected by 21. 21 cannot be the new 18, meaning young people turn 21 and they still not ready to enter the world. That cannot be what we're behind. We have to be behind ensuring that young people at 21, they're ready. They're ready to move, they're connected, they know how to navigate resources, and it cannot look like the services provided in this 18 to 21 period cannot look like foster care, the sequel. It can't look like that. It has to be different. It has to look totally different, because what we know is we know that young people in that age, they have different developmental needs. They have a increased need for healthy risk taking, just biologically. And that can look like, driving on a very basic standpoint. Driving is a big risk, but it's a necessary risk for a young person to take in order for them to be an independent adult. So what are some of those other things that young people need to help them make decisions and to transition and have that graduated independence experience that's beneficial to them? And then bridging and bonding. Young people need, like I said earlier, the opportunity to connect to community, but then they also need that opportunity to connect to people who've had those similar experiences, because it can be extremely empowering. And I'm bouncing around this PowerPoint. But again, programs are not enough. I just personally don't believe that a program is enough. And what is enough, I think programs, community connection, support, individual attention, developmentally appropriate services, just really targeting, okay, what is it that these young people need at this age? And so this is a list of some of the recommendations that I have just in my conversation. One of the biggest things I have a lot of big things actually, but one thing that I think is extremely important is that young people actually complete college. Because we get so excited when young people get into college, which is great. It is extremely great because the stats are still low for young people going to school or, attending post-secondary training, whatever. They're still low, so we get really excited. And then we kind of forget about those kids. And it's like, where are they graduating? Are they really graduating? And so that's one of the big things. Young people need to, they need to get into college, or if they want to do a trade or if they want to go directly into employment, they need to do that. But are they completing successfully? Are they getting out of college with a degree? And so what are the things that need to be in place for that? They need to have stable housing. They need to have childcare if that young person has a child. There are also a lot of policies in IOP, the Independent Living Program right now, that really cater the services. And I could be wrong because I haven't read the policy I haven't read it recently, but the resources are catered directly towards young people entering college. So if I go into the workforce, I may not necessarily have the same housing resources or the same stipend that college students get because I decided to enter into the workforce. So how can we balance that? How can we ensure that those young people are supported even if they're not going to college, even if they're going right into the workforce? Let's see, the housing piece I mentioned earlier I think is huge. Employment, like you said earlier with the employment and job seeking, I think that is absolutely vital as well, because even after college, that young person needs to know how to go out, how to search for employment, and again, it has to be more dynamic than just getting a job. They have to know how to do that on their own and how to connect to the appropriate resources. Social and emotional healing is another thing that I think that targets that whole deal with the trauma. I think that I would really love to see us look more at that because I think even for me, I was that young person who was good. Like everybody was like, oh yeah, we're glad we got Crystal on our case. We ain't got to see her. She's great. She's excelling. And I did great in school. I graduated top of my class. But then once I got into college, I had several emotional experiences that I didn't necessarily know how to handle. Like I connected with my biological mom, and then right before I graduated from college, she died. And I'm like, who is here for this? What resources are available for this? Because I'm not supposed to care about her no more. You know what I mean? But how do you connect? How do you really heal from these things? And what are the resources available for that? So that's pretty much it.